Last week we went on vacation, and this was the first vacation that we'd taken the kids on in a while where we went on a plane. Most of the time we're driving, we're going lots of places with them, but this was the first vacation we'd been on in a while that went to an airport. We flew from Sacramento, which is where we live, and we flew down to Orange County, California, which is where Disneyland is, where Huntington Beach is, like all the beaches are there, and that's where we were taking them to go on a summer vacation. And we got to the airport, and a really interesting thing I observed when I got to the airport that was in stark contrast to how the airport was even a year ago, let alone 2 years ago. And the airport, when I walked into it, was packed. I don't remember any time in the last 2 years seeing that many people in the baggage line. I don't remember seeing that many people at the terminals or the security line. I mean, I've got TSA, but there were people in line in TSA, and I haven't seen that in a really long time. Contrast that to 2 years ago, summer 2020, where COVID was still like being talked about all the time. And I guess they're still trying to talk about it all the time, but they're not talking about it nearly as much then. And people kind of figured out that we don't really need to be scared of this, but at the time they were freaked out. And so if you traveled during the summer of 2020, which I did a lot, my wife and I and our kids, we did a lot of traveling in the summer of 2020. We decided to take advantage of the fact that there wasn't anybody at the airport. Airlines were all trying to get people to board their flights so the prices were cheap. And then hotels were trying to get you to stay there, especially in places that revolved around tourism. And we took advantage of all of that, because there was nobody there. And so this kind of brought up an interesting thought in my mind based on what's going on in the world today and what's being talked about a lot today. If you've been paying attention to the news, which I actually don't watch the news, I stopped watching the news about 7 years ago because I realized there was nothing in it that I really needed to know and nothing that certainly made me feel better. So I stopped watching the regular news, like the news on TV. And every now and then I will get the news pop up in my YouTube feed, which I really don't want to pay attention to. I always say that I'm not interested in the video trying to teach their algorithm not to show me stuff that's on the news. But I do get a lot of stuff talking about this concept of recession. And I see some of my clients, they're talking about the recession and they're concerned about what's coming up. And my position on this is that I'm not going to participate in a recession. I'm simply just not going to participate. I'm going to continue pressing the pedal down and I'm going to encourage my clients to do the same. And in the cases where I am doing the work for my clients, I'm going to press the pedal down for them because of this very principle of the airport being empty to the airport being crowded. And the lesson is that other people's fear creates opportunity for you if you're willing to lean into it. So all this talk of recession, all this talk about, the next 6 months we might have big problems, inflation, all of this shit, what is it doing? It is creating fear inside of your competitors. And it's only creating fear inside of you if you allow it to be. Because the reality of the situation is that people are talking about being fearful of the recession and how there's going to be a massive market correction in housing, how there's going to be a massive decrease in spending, and there is going to be continued inflation. And as a result of this, we're going to have an economic recession. And so there's a lot of fear. But what if you decided not to be scared? What if you decided that that was an opportunity? Because there's still people who are going to buy. The craziest thing about all this is everybody's got money right now. Everybody who had money before the COVID thing happened has money now. And they even have more of it now. Because between the government bailouts, the EIDL loans, and then the new ERC, the Employee Retention Credit, people that had money have more money now than they've had before. Yet there's still all this talk about fear. And most of the time they're talking about fear because they're selling something too. They being the media, they being YouTubers that get paid for their channels. they're trying to create fear because they know that people's eyeballs go to the fear. But while everybody's looking that way towards the fear, I'm going to encourage you to look the other direction towards the opportunity. Because when there is massive fear, there is massive opportunity. Because what you're going to see, I would bet, over the next 6 months, 12 months, is you're going to see a contraction of a lot of people in the marketplace. They're going to choose not to play anymore, not to take the risks, not to try to grow. And instead, what they're going to do is they're going to pull back and they're going to be scared about deploying any of the resources, the capital resources that they currently have in order to make their companies stronger and bigger coming out the other side. This is a fact. Most people are going to do this, which is what creates an opportunity for you, assuming that you're not willing to be consumed by the fear of the talk of recession and what that might do. Because they're contracting, that gives you the opportunity to press forward. People are still going to be buying. There's always space at the top for everything. For everything. It's interesting. Some of this might even be a reframe around who you are packaging your product to. So here's a great example. I've got a client that does very, very high-end home building. I mean, these are people that buy from him buy like 12 different houses and they live in them every now and then. And these are people that are always buying. It doesn't matter. They buy in good economies, in bad economies. When there is a bad economy, they continue to buy, but now they're buying at a discount. There's always going to be room at the top. And so it might simply be that if you've got a product that is like a mid-tier price, you can simply elevate the price, repackage it towards a higher tier audience, and that higher tier audience will buy from you, regardless of what the market is. That's just one example in a myriad of examples that you could use or that I could use to show you how it doesn't matter what the larger narrative is on the overall economy, because there are going to be micro bubbles in everything, and you choose to participate and you choose to push forward while everybody else contracts, and that's where the real money is made. And I think people don't understand that. Otherwise, they wouldn't contract in the first place. The other thing to consider is nobody's got the ability to tell the future. They can predict what they want to predict, but the flaw in that is it's based on logic. And my challenge to them and challenge to you, if you're really buying in on what people are talking about with recessionary stuff, is how much of the last 2 years has been based on any sort of logic versus paranoia versus fear. You know the answer to the question. So I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm not saying it will happen. I'm saying that the evidence so far over the last couple of years has shown that logic doesn't really play a role in the way things unfold. So if logic is what is used to predict the fact that we will have a recession or inflation will increase or whatever, then we've got to consider that logic may not necessarily be the right thing that's going to predict what happens out there. All that you can do is control your own actions. And so my hope for you is that you will have courage going forward into whatever economic environment we are going into, and the one after that, and the cycle after that, and the cycle after that, because there's always going to be opportunity for people who are brave. All right, guys, that's it. That's the show for the day. As you know, what your job is now to go do something about this. So in my mind, what I'd be preparing for if I were you is, what is my press forward plan if my competitors start to contract? What must I do to lean into the fear and capitalize on the opportunity that my competitors simply refuse to do? And if you can answer that question, that's going to start to build the roadmap for you for where you need to go if and when that happens. But the beauty of it is that you can execute it even if they're not contracting, because you're going to build a map to go forward and get bigger. Oh, and of course, do not forget to like and subscribe to this channel. Also, if this video you think was valuable to somebody else that you know, hit the share icon and just share it up with them. You can copy the link, paste it in your text messages, drop it right to them. Appreciate it, guys. I'll see you on the next video.